Hello and welcome to episode 32 of When the Flames Go Up, the ATFC podcast. A little bit of a shorter episode this week because we had to jump off to record our latest all-time 11s, which uh, it's great fun. Great fun recording those. If you've got any other suggestions for all-time 11s that we should put together, then please do send them into atfcpodcast@gmail.com. The more deranged and mad, the better, to be honest. I offhandedly at the end of this suggest that we should do a good looking 11. I mean, John Halls, your Joel Grants. Look, I mean, already. Listen, I'll leave it up to you. Ross Warner. Um, yeah, to be honest, I might just go right down that 11 now. Anyway, that's for another time. You'll get to hear that at some point. But yeah, send me your suggestions if you want. And yeah, just wanted to say that yeah, all our best wishes go from the pod and everyone on it to Ollie Harfield and his speedy recovery. We do mention it in the pod, but we didn't give it like its own space. So yes, that's that. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and let's pray for a goal and a win at the weekend. Up the shots. Right, so here we are after two home games and no more goals from the shots. That is five. What's that? 5 games without a win, and stretching back to that Maidenhead at home game, which seems like an age ago on Bank Holiday Monday, August Bank Holiday Monday. 1 goal scored in 5, which is unheard of in Tommy Widgerton's time, and I tried to have a look at similar forms we've had under Widrington, and obviously I could only find last season's end of season, which was 7 games without a win. And in that run, we scored 2 goals in 6 games. So we're on track for that potentially if we don't get something at Yeovil at the weekend. But I did look at last season's start of the season, and we lost to Barnet after the 10th game. And we were 17th after that. So this season, after 11 games, we are also 17th after a loss to Barnet. So that's quite an interesting parallel. After that game last season, we beat Bromley away. So Ultra have the perfect opportunity away at Yeovil at the weekend to put things right. I'm going to come to you first, Ash. What are your thoughts on those 2 home games and the kind of current winless, not many goals scored run?
It's a bit strange, as you said. Well, it's one of these that I think we're doing the right things. It's just not happening in that final third. The Rochdale game, I thought it was one of the most entertaining nil-nils I've seen. I thought it was very end to end. I thought that could have been 0-0 or even 3-3. I thought we did quite well, but really we're just missing the target. It was quite strange for me to see. I thought at the end it was a good point against a very good York team. And I think yesterday Barnet just showed, I think their quality that they have in depth within their squad. I think that was the real difference maker. Um, I've got more to say a bit about Barnet than what I have about York, because I think York, I think I would have took the draw there and from the beginning, and I think it was a fair result. The draw, it's the point itself. I just want to touch on the red card incidents. I I was where I was stood. They looked very very similar challenges. One gets a yellow, one gets a red. And I didn't see how Glover didn't get his red card throughout the game. But it is quite concerning that we're not scoring and we're not winning many games either. I read somewhere that we've had, I think it was 4 or 5 wins in the last 19 league games, which is a real, yeah, that's a real worry. And if you've done that same, if we're 19 games in the season and we won 4 or 5, that's putting us further down, 17th in my opinion. But I'm sure the upcoming game that we'll have, Yeovil have not scored in 4 games, so it'll either be 0-0 or 4-4, and we'll get back to where we were before.
Yeah, I think that's been the main thing. I think we said that. I said that in the group chat last night that there's a goal glut coming, and I feel sorry for Yeovil already. Julian, I'll come to you. What are your overall thoughts on the York at home game and Barnet last night?
Yeah, thanks. Well, very similar to Ash in that the York game for me was entertaining. I think you won't see many more entertaining nil-nils than that. I thought it was a really good game. There were chances for either side, and it was a real surprise that it was 0-0. But yeah, they were top of the league, and you can see the quality. I was just thinking about a point that Guy made last week, actually, in the podcast, in that it's so unpredictable, this league. You know, York City were fighting relegation last year, and now look at them. And Hinchelwood, excuse me, has come in back end of last year. He's taken a lot of flack from the York supporters, but he's stuck to his guns. He's brought in some players from non-league South, and he's kept the spine in there, and he's put together a really good team. And again, a bit of what Ash said earlier on, they do have quality and depth as well. So yeah, I'll take a point with regard to that for sure. With regard to the Barnet game, I think it was just one of those games where even if we'd been 11-11, I'm not sure we would have got anything out of it. There was a lot of industry going on. You know, had he got a man of the match award for his industrious performance, lots of running, lots of endeavour. We just didn't have the quality, I think, when we really needed it. So I think as much as anything, these two games has really solidified our position, and we know very clearly now. We've played the top teams, we've played the bottom teams. I think we know very clearly now where we should be aiming for. And with my positive mindset head on, we are only 2 points off seventh, which actually, and only 10, 11 games in, it really is nothing. So I'm really hoping that they work hard on the training ground this week. Tommy knows better than anybody what we need to do. He mentioned in his post-match interview that perhaps one or two of the players went off script, and I love the comment that he said, saying something like, that's the easiest way that you'll get yourself out of the team, if you go off script. And so, yeah, he's got a plan. I think he's going to put together a team on Saturday, albeit without Aaron Jones and Theo Widdrington in the middle. But I think he's going to put together a team, and I think we're going to really go on the front foot. I'm sure we'll talk about the Oval game shortly, but I am feeling confident for that one.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. The Tommy Ridgington post-match interview, where he kind of, in no uncertain terms, said whoever it was, and I'm not sure, I couldn't really work out who it was. They will be dropped. So whatever the change is on Saturday, we can read into that when the starting lineup comes out. And Guy, what were your thoughts on those two games?
Well, first of all, to say, so I obviously watched them, streaming it. So it was as the other two have said, the York game was very enthralling despite being a 0-0. I was a little bit annoyed that I lost about 15 minutes of it because somehow when I disappeared at half time and came back to find my 4-year-old had done something to my laptop, which meant that the mouse indicator had disappeared. We were not able to sort of log in for that time. So I was desperately worried that something might happen in those 15 minutes. Came back to be reassured that it was still 0-0. Actually, the notes that I took at the end of the York game was that we found out how to defend, but we've forgotten how to score, which is kind of ironic given the state of things in August where we were so free scoring. But I was struck by how much of the defending was pretty solid against both of these teams who are up at the top of the table. What was striking was when we did there were a few lapses, but not many. I mean, when I think back to last season and watching the defense, it seemed so brittle. They seemed so vulnerable. But now I kind of feel that we're playing with a quite solid defense. Seems to be a good understanding despite sort of the changes that have taken place between some of the personnel. When obviously we conceded and we lost against Barnet yesterday, and I did notice that during that in the build up to that play, obviously it was scored from a cross by Kabamba in at the far side. But what was striking was the assist that was made by Bailey Hobson. He had acres of space when he's no one seemed to be on him, which was quite striking because it stood out for me that the defense has been sort of, when we get players behind the ball, we have been sort of crowding out these two teams. I mean, in terms of the Barnet game, yes, it's disappointing. I think I felt a point against York. I was happy with that. I mean, the first 15, 20 minutes were great against Barnet as well, I felt. But then once we went one goal down and there wasn't much in it, and then 5 minutes later to go one man down against the league leaders, I mean, did we really expect much more? For me, not really. And I was also struck in my notes about the number of times that when we did get the ball and we sort of played it forward, there was just not sort of anyone on the end of it, whether it was a through ball, whether it was a cross. That's what seems to be missing up front at the moment from free play. Also, the other thing I wanted to just say that I noticed from both games as well. We started out against York with a lot of the playing on the ground. Then we seemed to move into the second half to a lot of sort of, high balls, sort of just punted forwards. And that seemed to also continue with Barnet as well. Now, my impression is, particularly from last season as well, was that we are a team that likes to play with the ball on the ground. And so it did seem a little bit odd to me that we do seem to be, going for these more aerial balls now, and you would notice this as well at at corners as well, because we did have, I think, towards the end of last season and even at the start of this season, a lot of short corners. We seem to be now putting it into the box, I believe, if for those who are more statistically minded, the odds of scoring from that are much less than if you're just trying to play it through. I mean, but I just noticed this, and that maybe that's something to talk about when we come to the question of why what's happened up front, because I think at the back we're doing a lot better. But then I also just want to say, because you also started, Will, by just mentioning the sort of where we are in terms of form and in terms of games, and I was struck. I thought I was curious to sort of see where we were. We've now played 11 games, so we're a quarter of the way through the season. So what's striking is that we have, out of those 11 games, we have won 3, drawn 4, and lost 4. This time last year, 11 games in, we'd won 4, drawn 2, and lost 5. We are, and we have 13 points this year versus 14 points at this same time last year. In a way, actually, we're kind of where we were last year. Leave aside all the sort of the excitement and the exuberance and the that we had in the we were challenging towards the end of the season. It's true, but I think the first quarter of the season, and if memory serves me, I can't remember which game it was where we had the sort of the final minute winner. On a Tuesday night, I think it was in November sometime. That's really when the season turned. So looking at where we are now compared to last year, there's not a lot of difference in things. Just the difference between then, last year we weren't drawing that many. It's ironic that we seem to have managed to work out how to draw and how to defend.
Yeah, that's the thing. But also, I mean, 5 games ago, and when we beat Maidenhead, and we were still looking at our defense, thinking it's a bit shaky, and we haven't got enough reinforcements, or it's not looking strong enough. Whereas I've been very pleased with the defense in the last few games, definitely. And Makoma dealt with Kabamba he just completely man-marked him out of the game, wrestled him to the floor. I mean, it was like the ideal performance to stop the league's best scorer. League's best scorer? One of the league's best scorers. But obviously, it doesn't really matter. It's like Harry Kane can have 89 minutes where he's anonymous and he will still find a way to score. And Kabamba did pop up with that goal last night.
Just a quick word. I wanted to praise Lackey Bird, because I think he's been under a bit of pressure, not being a regular starter. But it really feels to me as if he's taken his chance. And although we haven't got the number of defenders now that we did have before, I think he needs a pat on the back. I think he's really come to, and he did get a bit of stick towards the start of the season. So I'm really looking forward to him growing in confidence and building on what potential he's shown us already. The other thing I was just going to mention, Will, which I forgot to mention before, is that no one can ever accuse this podcast of being glory hunters, can they? Because we turn up week in, week out, we do our thing, even when we don't score goals. So there you go.
I know we're made of thicker stuff, aren't we? Go on.
Yeah, can I just add on Bird as well? What's striking to me as well is he's not just putting the work in at the back. He does get forward as well. He does do a bit of link up play in the midfield, and you occasionally see him sort of popping up, up and near the opposition's penalty box as well. So I mean, I don't think we're going to see very many goals from him, but he does seem to, as you say, Julian, sort of growing in confidence. The fact that he's willing to get forward, does seem to indicate that as well.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, we're going to need him to kind of, well, I guess, fulfill that role that Ollie Harfield was able to do on the other side, which I suppose, gets us to the kind of elephant in the room, which is in the York at home game, Ollie Harfield went down over the goal line and was kind of, I don't know, unintentionally trod on / on the turn. And yeah, you can see pretty clearly from the reaction on the field that it was not a pleasant sight. We're not sure at this stage exactly what it is, but Theo Widrington, not Theo, Tommy seems to think it's something similar to what he had that kind of came at the back end of his career and didn't help, I don't think, with making his decision to end his career. So yeah, I mean, obviously it goes without saying, but yeah, all our thoughts with Ollie at this time, which can't be easy. So it's a kind of a weird time. We've got now another suspension with Aaron Jones' red card, and a lot of injuries, and a National League Cup coming up. So, I mean, there's a lot going on, really. Ash, I'm going to just throw it to you. Speak on whatever you like on that list of things that I've given you.
I'm going to touch on the National League Cup. On the surface of it, I don't think it's actually going to take off, personally. I first of all had a look at how it's viable for the National League clubs. The pot of money isn't suffice for what a replay would give you. And looking at the crowds that they get at the under-21s, ignoring, I think it's Sunderland that get 2,500 at under-21 the game. A couple of the teams have got Tottenham Hotspur, for example, and their average attendance at home for an under-21 game is 550. So how many are we going to get when people are wanting to boycott the whole competition? And a lot of the clubs there that you've noticed that have pulled out of it are your teams that you're looking to get into it's the EFL. So I personally think with it, it's just a distraction from what we would say is our main goal of having a good cup run and getting into those playoffs this year. And Reading pulling out obviously is a sign. Obviously, they've got different issues, but it's a sign that it's not on their priorities as an under-21s team. So whose priorities is it? Is my question.
I can't answer it, but I have no idea who wins out of this cup at all. It completely baffles me. It's just yeah, I don't know. Julian, you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was trying to look at it from the Premier club's point of view, and I was sort of likening it to us entering our reserve team competition with sort of Badshot Lee and Tadley. Yeah, it's not appealing, even for our younger players to get that sort of experience. They can just go out on loan at a high level if they need experience. So that's not the reason for the competition. It's just smells of a deal between the Premier League, wanting to cut the games down for those replays. I think that's the only thing that's really pushing this. As Ash said, I think the prize money is something like $1 million over the whole competition, which means you'll probably get 50 grand out of it if you're lucky. The way the energy prices are going at the moment, that's probably just one evening game floodlights is going to cost you that. So yeah, it's really not an incentive either to do it, I think. So I put on the group chat, I think it's going to go potentially the way of the European Super League. I think the power of the supporters is going to show through, and no one, I don't think I've seen anybody yet on social media that's shown any interest in the competition. The only thing that would possibly sort of spike my interest would be if there's a Wembley final at the end of it. But I would be really surprised if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at this point, I mean, even then, I mean, who are you going to have to beat to get to Wembley? It's just, I don't, because it's going to be our reserves against what, I don't even know what other National League teams are left in here, but their reserves as well, because they've got a game on the Saturday that they're going to prioritise. We've got a squad depth that is just about enough for 5 subs, just enough, and we've got loads of injuries. Can't think of a squad in this league that can handle it, and the squads that can have already dropped out anyway. So, no idea. I'm speechless. But also, it's just so ill thought out. The fact that you had Reading sign up to it and agree to it. That's great. Okay, cool. Get them along. And then they've seen the fixtures. They've then run the numbers and gone, oh no, we can't do this. But it baffles me. Completely lost me. And obviously we're not going to drop out because a certain someone's on the board. But if all the rest of the clubs could also drop out, that would make it a little bit easier for us to think. What do you think of it, Guy?
Well, I mean, I know people sort of looking at it more from the sort of the Premier League's perspective, isn't it? Sort of, but let's get our under-21 teams getting experience by playing, sort of, playing sort of, seasoned professionals in the National League, and the reaction being, well, fan power is probably going to sort of, sink this thing below the waterline. I mean, I think if I want to be subversive about this as well, I mean, I wonder whether sort of the management team would also consider putting out, reserve teams or sort of academy teams against this, this Premier League under-21s. Just let it be a reserve competition, and then, if Julian, we get towards, Wembley, we're close. Then we bring out the big guns. Then we bring out the first team, which is what the Premier League teams always do when it comes to something like the Carabao Cup. Why not just play them at their own game, I say. But I think, yes, I mean, the bigger picture is, what this almost seems to be sort of, the Premier League has made a big thing about the money all going to, the National League teams, sort of the National League sort of, all the games being played at National League grounds, them sort of sucking up all the revenue and the prize winnings in exchange for, sort of the end of replays in FA Cup games, which is a bit odd because here they were complaining about too many games and now they're sort of creating a new competition entirely. There is, of course, I think something else that should also be said here, which is, is this sort of the thin end of the wedge of trying to get these kind of under-21 teams from the Premier League into some level of national competition, right? So, obviously, it's you'd be unlikely to get sort of the under-21 teams or reserve teams into sort of League One or League Two, but maybe soften up the National League and with this incentive, and then perhaps try and get them in at that level. I mean, I've actually because I live in Europe, I've been to I've spent some time in Belgium. This is precisely what some of the bigger clubs have done in Belgium by getting their junior teams, their academy teams into the second division. And you see, these established teams with a long history having to play, sort of Anderlecht's, academy squad, and they either hammer them or they don't. Now there is an odd situation that these teams are playing, but they can't actually get promoted, which does beg the question. It does devalue the level of the competition somewhat. So. If for some reason an academy team ends, first or second, they're not going to get promoted. You have to go down to the third or fourth team to go up. It's all very odd, and I think it sort of devalues the competition somewhat. I'm sort of curious to see whether this is sort of somewhere further down the track that the Premier League is looking for. But I mean, I would just say, look, play them at their own game. If they want to put their reserve teams out, their junior squads out, then why don't we just do exactly the same to them? Treat it as a kick around for our junior players. Why not?
Just to add in there, I don't know if you saw what Farnborough did in the Hampshire Cup recently. They played, can't remember, you'll have to remind me who they played, and lost 14-0 because they put in their academy players and some supporters as well, which I think was a great idea. So sharpen up your boots, Guy. You could be the answer to our
Oh,
prayers.
the dream, the dream. Well, actually, I mean, given my age, I'm more likely to be standing on the touchline, where besuited like a la Tommy Widdrington, rather than actually on the pitch. I think it'd be much better screaming and shouting at you lot. So, Julian, you'll be out there.
And it was Tadley Cadava. There we go. Did Tadley got brought up earlier, didn't it? Did you mention him earlier, Julian?
They're obviously on my mind.
Yeah, see? Full circle. Right, we've got 4 minutes to talk about Yeovil. Ash, give us 1 minute on your thoughts ahead of Yeovil on the weekend.
Two teams not in good form, not scoring many goals. Recipe for a good game, I assume. I think that's the head and nail of it. I hope they start our top goal scorers in the league, and I hope that James Henry finds the net a few times and we come out with the 3 points, because if we don't, it doesn't look very good from here.
Great stuff. Right. All I've got is obviously what you've mentioned before. They're without a win in 4. We're without a win in 5. Brett McGavin is the top goal scorer with 3 goals at the moment. X shots. Don Bernard. Who knew he was back in National League level? I didn't. Frank Noble. We know the surname from our friend Joel or Joel. And Aaron Jarvis, who's a bagsman from National League South. He'll be dangerous. That's all I've got at the moment. Julian, what are your thoughts on Yeovil?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I'm going again with Ash, hoping that James Henry finds his scoring boots again. Yeovil have got quite a decent defence. They've got a goalie on loan from Southampton, I think it is, who's doing well, and Alex Whittle, their left back, is a blast from the past. I think he had some links with us at one stage, so he's a good guy. And their right back, Michael Smith, is a real journeyman. He's in his sort of mid-30s now, but has done it in the Scottish Premiership, and the fans love him to bits. Actually, he's always coming out in their sort of their thoughts for player of the match. So they're going to be tough to break down. So we're going to need to get James Henry and even Josh Barrett being creative. I think Tete will come back into the middle with Theo being out, and obviously Ashley Akpan will be back on the right-hand side to replace Aaron
Jones. Guy, what do you? You've got a minute. What do you think about Yeovil at the weekend?
Yeah, so in terms of Yeovil shots this weekend, so it's so the odds are shortening on both a home and an away victory, and it's looking more and more likely that that a draw is on the cards. Given where we've been over the last few games, do we really want to see one of those? Or the sort of currently the odds are sort of for I think it's a 2-2 draw rather than sort of 0-0. So that at least bodes well for our goal scoring exploits. In terms of who to be watching out for, I mean, you're right to have flagged up Brett McGavin and Aaron Jarvis. Did you also mention Sam Pearson as well? Because he seems to have sort of, in terms of some of the data that's out there, he seems to be up there as kind of Yeovil's most effective performer, at least in front of goal. Although interestingly enough, who's top of the National League in at least in terms of the FB ref stats is actually James Henry, despite not having scored for a few games now. So probably still living on the laurels of August. But yeah, the way things are going, neither team's doing particularly great at the moment. We're sort of pretty much down. We're both around mid-table. I'm kind of expecting it to be a draw.
And that was where Guy was cut off by the Zoom, and we didn't have time to go and re-find that thread. So that's the end of the episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one next week. Bye.